There are a number of high availability solutions when looking to increase the availability of your SQL Server environment. So we're going to take a look at the main four here. And the first one is what's known as AlwaysOn failover cluster instances. From there, we'll have a look at AlwaysOn availability groups, then database mirroring, and finally log shipping. Now, you can choose any one of these, of course, and in fact, you can even mix them to a certain degree depending on how you want your databases and or servers to be available. But looking at the first one, the AlwaysOn failover cluster instance leverages the Windows Server failover clustering feature. So again, take note, it's the Windows Server failover clustering. In other words, this is not a SQL feature in and of itself. Commonly referred to as WSFC. You simply have to install the failover clustering feature at your Windows Server level, and then SQL Server takes advantage of this. It provides local high availability through redundancy at the server instance level, which in essence equates to what's known as an FCI, or a failover cluster instance. With this, with FCI, you have a single instance of SQL Server installed across Windows Server failover clustering nodes. So you have your several servers, and each one of them is a node in the cluster, or each instance that gets installed then appears to be an instance of SQL Server on one server, rather than across multiple servers. So to the clients who are connecting to it, they really don't have any idea that there is anything more than a single server. So this provides failover from one node to another. Any node that goes down, the instance on that node is running, of course, on another server in the cluster, which can then resume or pick up the services in the event that the initial one has failed. The availability group is similar. It's a high availability and disaster recovery solution for user databases in an enterprise environment. And that's sort of the key difference, is that this is operating at the database level and not the server level. So your availability group is a failover environment for a discrete set of user databases that fail over together. It supports a set of read-write primary databases, the one that in essence you use for your daily activities, and then 1 to 8 sets of secondary databases. These are in essence the standby copies that are ready to resume services, or I should say assume services, in the event of the primary database failing. But the nice feature of availability groups, the secondary databases can be made available for read access and backup operations. So your primary database that probably has a lot of activity happening in it can basically be used to accept new records and things like that. And, they're still transferred over to the secondary copies, but you can do things like issue queries and generate reports and, of course, do backups from those secondary copies, which aren't as busy as the primary copy. So it allows for a little bit of load balancing at the same time. So the failover level in this case is one of the availability replicas. Any one database fails over, it moves to another copy of that database. Now, database mirroring and log shipping are a little bit older, if you will. They've been around for quite some time. Database mirroring increases the availability of a SQL Server database, which must be using the full recovery model. And you see it contains the primary database and then a mirrored database, which of course is the secondary copy of that database. So one of the limitations is that it is only for two databases. You have your primary, you have your mirror, and pretty much that's it. So it's a little more limited. In fact, scheduled to be discontinued in future releases of SQL Server, but as of the time of this recording, they haven't exactly said when that will be, but certainly something that is maybe discouraged for future use. Log shipping is similar again to the availability groups in that it maintains additional copies of a database, but it's a little more manual, if you will. It does still operate at the database level, and it can be used to maintain one or more standby databases for the production database, And it does automatically send the transaction log backups to a standby database on separate servers, but there's no automatic failover with log shipping. So when one database fails, you have to manually bring one of the standby copies online yourself. But what you can do with log shipping is to alter the amount of time, the latency that you're dealing with, which in some cases can be beneficial. If you are looking to correct corruption, for example, you can have the transaction logs have a bit of a delay before they are written to the standby copies. So if some kind of corruption appears on any given day, if you have a standby copy that has yet to receive those transaction logs, then that copy is unaffected by that corruption. So you could use that to maybe restore the database and of course eliminate the corruption. So like I said, any or all of them can be used, and some certainly can be used in conjunction with each other depending on your environment. You can have an availability failover cluster instance, then you can create availability groups on different servers. You can still have log shipping on other servers. So it really comes down to what you feel is best suited to your environment. But a number of options are available, and we'll see each of them in greater detail as we move through the upcoming demonstrations.